Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity to present this information to you this morning. And first, let me start by saying that that is what we're here to do, only to present information. We are not here to advocate for anything. It is strictly prohibited that we advocate for the bond. So all we are here to do is to give you information and let you make up your own minds. And so certainly if you have any questions, feel free to ask us at the end or along the way if you have any questions. So to start with, we're here to talk about a two-proposition bond issue that is going to be sent to the voters in April and May of this year. The two propositions, Proposition A is for drainage improvements and Proposition B is for traffic improvements. Now Yvette and her staff put together this entire presentation, but I'm going to talk to you about the drainage and then she'll talk to you about the traffic portion of the bond. And our legal counsel says we have to do this in Spanish too, so there it is. Okay, so why are we doing this? Well, the City of McAllen prides ourselves on the fact that we do listen to our residents. We go out there and we ask them what it is that they believe is needed in our city, how we're doing, what kind of a job we're doing in various areas throughout the services that we provide for our residents. And in 2015 was our latest citizen survey. We do it every 3 years. We'll be starting another one this coming year, or later this year. And two of the things that ranked very high on the needs that the citizens indicated were they were needing in the city was drainage and traffic improvements. And so this survey was conducted by an independent institute, the ETC Institute, and they did a random survey of citizens in our community. We had a pretty good response rate, and they compiled the report that was then given back to the city. The full results of that report is on our city website if you're interested in that, but you can see that the two of the top priorities were drainage and traffic. So the city staff takes that information and we go back and develop plans, action plans for the various needs in the city. So Yvette and her staff, they updated the master storm drainage plan that we had already for the city that was from 2008. They take all of the calls that they received, that traffic receives, public works receives, engineering, and all of the manpower hours. After every storm that we have, there are areas where we would have to go out, we would have to barricade, we would have to send crews to do remediation and things of that nature. And so they compiled all of that information. They conducted an inventory of existing structures and drainage improvements or infrastructure in the city, and developed a plan to replace aging infrastructure. And then, of course, we've been annexing some areas in the last few years, and so those areas also had to be incorporated into the master drainage plan because they weren't previously considered as they were part of the county. And also a part of the overall development of a stormwater quality monitoring ordinance because that's being required by the state at this time. The traffic plan, Yvette will go into more detail on that, but basically they have a lot of controllers out there that have to talk to one another, and the signal loops have to detect the traffic, and so they're increasing those detections and maintenance but beyond what we currently do. And they are also looking at completing a congestion management study, creating a live traffic control center to monitor traffic live via a room at the EOC where the fire department is, and then annual improvement intersections. So this is our long-term planning phase of the project. Then of course we have to pay for it. So once they developed the estimates for what everything would cost to do, we started looking at different ways to pay for this. In the past, traditionally, McAllen has been a pay-as-you-go city, which means that we would have capital improvement funds that we would use for improvements annually. A lot of that funding came from gas and oil royalties, and those have steadily decreased. So we need to look at other funding sources. If we were to start doing that today with just the capital improvement funds, it would take over 60 years based on the historical funding. We've spent about $325,000 a year on drainage over the past 10 years. And it would take us about 60 years to get all of the money needed to do that. So in order to reduce that time frame and get some of these needs addressed in a more timely fashion, we've sought alternative funding sources. And you will see the last slide in my presentation shows the 5 different sources for drainage implementation. So again, these are the two propositions, drainage and traffic control. And this is the fiscal planning and management portion of it. So Proposition A is drainage. This is an actual picture from an area that was what was 10th and what? Toronto. So there's various areas like this across the city that have some drainage challenges that we need to look at. But we haven't just been waiting for the bond to start addressing this problem. We have, as I mentioned, been doing project improvements every single year. From 2006 to 2009, you can see some of the areas that have been worked on. These little circles represent areas where drainage improvements have been done between 2006 to 2009. The cost of those project improvements was $1.92 million, again through various CDBG funding sources and capital improvement funds. Continuing on, additional projects done from 2006 to 2011, there were $3.73 million worth of projects completed for a total cumulative of $5.65 million projects. And then the last 3 years, we've added another $8.29 million for a total of almost $14 million in drainage improvements. You can see they're spread well throughout the city. And the last 4 years, there's been another $1.71 million for a grand total of over $15.5 million worth of drainage projects that have been done in the city from 2006 to 2018. Now, the ones that are still to be identified, there's still approximately $45 million worth of drainage project needs out there. The bond project is proposing to do approximately half of that, or $22 million. The ones in red are, there are 23 projects that are listed up there. And again, there will be more information available on the website. We do have a list of them on the next page, but there are 23 projects, ranging from very small projects at $45,000 to projects that are up over $5 million. So each of them has a different cost and a different scope, and Yvette's staff is busily putting together the scope and the design for those projects. Assuming the bond sale were to pass, it would be completed in January to February of 2019. Design services would then be procured via various engineering firms, and design services could begin mid to late of 2019, and construction for the smaller projects could begin as early as 2020. We would hope to have them all done within approximately a 3-year period. So this is the master drainage plan. The green ones are green and red are the ones that have yet to be done, and those, as I mentioned, total about almost $50 million of drainage improvements. The $22 million would be from the bond, and then the remaining would be through other various revenue sources. And as I mentioned, there would be a slide on the various revenue sources. This capital improvements project, which is what CIP stands for, I think I failed to say that. So capital improvement projects would total $2.1 million. CDBG funding is community development block grant funding, which is funding that is only eligible for areas of low income, and so there are only certain areas of the city that we can use these funds for drainage projects, and we would hope to have about $1.5 million of those projects. Yvette's staff has been incredibly successful with obtaining grants through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which is a FEMA project that is available whenever there's flooding disasters, and they have procured, these are the ones that you've already procured, $5.1 million in grants. So they've actually gotten grant funding to take care of over $5 million. That's 10% of the need right there. And they're currently undergoing design of those projects. We also decided to try another source of funding, which is called a TIRZ, a Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone. And we created an overlay district over the mall area, the convention center area, and some of the commercial areas. And what this essentially allows us to do is to capture the increase in valuation of construction in those areas to put towards drainage. Not only does it put the increase of the value in the taxes that we receive on that construction from the city, but the county is also contributing to that. So we've leveraged county dollars to help address some of these drainage projects taking place in areas where our commercial construction is booming. So it's really an innovative way to help us address this without having to hit the property taxes as hard. Now, there's also a stormwater utility fee that is currently being implemented this month. That was adopted by the City Commission. It's approximately $1.50 per residential unit per month, And that is something that you'll be starting to see on your water bills, and that's also going to raise about $11 million over the course of 8 years, I believe it is, that we anticipate that taking to fund those projects that we've identified for the storm water utility fee. And then, of course, the last remaining piece of that puzzle is the $22 million bond that we're going to the voters to decide on whether they would care to fund that or not. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yvette and let her. Sure.
Could you go back to the previous slide and give us a bearing, please? Some crossroads there. I can't see the.
Yvette, you'll be better off to do that.
Does it have a coordinate?
Yes, agreed.
So right there is the expressway. That's
I'm
that's the expressway
Oh, okay.
right there. And then 10th, I believe, is right here
That's 10th Street.
in that
And the
area.
crossroad at the very top is Trenton.
This is probably Trenton. Give me 1 second.
A little small. And these will be available again on the website later so that you can be able to zoom in and really get a good.
This is Freddie Gonzalez up here.
Oh,
Yes, Hobbs is one of the drainage projects. Yes. Yes,
I
sir.
have a question. Number one, thank y'all. Y'all are doing a great job in the city of McAllen, without a doubt. You're still the number one city in the valley, south of San Antonio. However, when I was listening to how we're paying for this stuff, it sounds like a tax, a tax, a tax. So you put all this together, how do we stand tax-wise for Charlotte and Brownsville? And if you're putting an additional fee or tax, basically a tax on the construction people, why in the heck would anybody want to come and do business here? They know they're going to get hit with another tax if you're concentrating on those areas.
Right. Well, it's actually not a tax. What it is it's the taxes you're going to pay anyways, because it's taxes on your valuation of improvement. It's not an extra tax. What we do is we freeze the tax. Let's say you have a vacant tract today in that area. Okay, so let's say it's worth $10,000. Well, the taxes on the $10,000 is going to continue to go to the general fund. But when you build a building there and now it's worth $100,000, you're going to pay taxes on $100,000. No matter what. The taxes that you pay on that additional $90,000 is going to be earmarked for drainage. So we're not actually taking away from the tax base, and we're not actually increasing their taxes. We're just earmarking it so that it is prioritizing the drainage needs.
That might need to be explained a little bit better.
It's a very difficult concept. Yes. Sorry. And the TERS. That's for the TERS, yes. Yes, sir?
Okay, so if I'm correct, the drainage is northeast. Is that correct? The water.
The outfall?
Yes.
Some of it.
Right.
It's split.
Some goes, the majority goes northeast, but we have a split that comes to the south also.
To the river.
Out towards, far, to the levee.
Okay. I've always been told that part of our drainage problem is the infrastructure of drainage in Edinburgh. And so what's the relationship there? Is that true?
So our drainage outfalls are controlled by the drainage district. And they do those controls because they're trying to limit and time the amount of water that's being released so we don't impact cities downstream. So there are limitations to our overall outfall as we go downstream. However, within the city itself, before we even reach those outfalls and those controls, we have limitations as well. We'll have some storm events where water doesn't get into our drainage system fast enough, so it doesn't even make it to that point. The plan that we have put together has various components in it. Some of the components include drainage infrastructure, such as inlets and storm drains, so we can pick up the areas that don't have drainage at this time. Other components include widening our existing drain ditches to provide additional capacity, building additional stormwater detention facilities, not in size, but similar to the ones that we have at McAuliffe and the Jackson. Those stormwater detention facilities will hold water to give us the time that we need before we can release. So we're also including that as part of the overall master drainage plan. So there's different elements involved, but yes, certainly the county or the drainage district controls what we can release. The county recently passed a bond. They're working on building what they're referring to as the Raymondville Drain, which will provide additional capacity to be able to take water that they weren't able to take before.
I also wanted to address the concern about the Brownsville and Harlingen taxes. McAllen's taxes are lower, property taxes are lower. Yes, sir.
You're talking about the storm detention, right? Right behind the hospital, between McAllen and Second, that's where my house happens to be. You guys let DHR to cover the whole store. I don't, what is it? Is it Edinburgh?
It is Edinburgh. It is Edinburgh, but it is our ditch.
I
Yes.
don't know exactly who did what, but it's been covered up. And now, I think it's in some kind of a lawsuit, they don't even let them to put asphalt yet. Do you all know anything about that?
Well, we're not aware of a lawsuit, but we did work with them to go ahead and size the proper boxes to ensure that the drainage through there would be continue to be adequate. But the property is actually in the city of Edinburgh, and we have been in contact with Edinburgh's management as far as making sure that they get the proper permits for the asphalt and that it drains properly, because we do have residents that abut that drainage ditch right now. I do know it has come to a stop for some time. I've been trying to get some answers, but I don't have any for you at this
So
time.
McAllen had nothing to do with it?
Not as far as the permitting of the parking lot. That is in.
Did McAllen pay for it?
No, McAllen did not pay for it.
Edinburgh paid for it?
I believe DHR paid for it. The drainage ditch is McAllen's, but the land is in the city of Edinburgh. And so what we did is we worked with DHR to ensure that they they did the design for the boxes for our ditch so that they could cover it. But the property is required to be permitted for the parking lot by the city of Edinburgh. But the DHR is the one that is paying for it. It is a private project. We did not incur any expenses as far as the drainage there. Okay.
Next time you're on the second floor.
So the second proposition are traffic improvements, bless you. And the traffic improvements include hardware, engineering, and communication to improve the mobility through signal coordination and synchronization. So when we look at that, we're looking at our signal timing. In the city of McAllen, we have 208 traffic signals and 11 corridors that we're working towards coordination. And those corridors include our major corridors, both north, south, and east, west. So you can see the list there: McCall, 2nd, 10th, Bicentennial, 23rd, Ware, and then east, west, Trenton, Dove, Nolana, Pecan, Business 83. When we are talking about coordination, we're actually looking at the hardware components of our signals, what we refer to as the signal brains. That includes both the controller and the cabinet. So the controller is essentially this component here, and the cabinet is the metal boxes that you see out in the field. We recently purchased new software, Centrax, that is a more robust system with more capabilities that we had in the past. We're rolling out that software to all of our controllers so that we can get better communication from our signals. However, the Centrax software does not work with our old controllers. We are purchasing new Cobalt controllers so that we can communicate with them. And the reason for that is the old controllers that we had and the software that we had is no longer being maintenanced. So we don't have support from that system anymore. We're moving into this new system, which TxDOT is also moving towards. And so basically the controller are found inside the cabinet. The new controllers will have capabilities to connect to our fiber optic system, which we're looking to extend so that we can get communication to those signals. We're also looking at, as part of the bond, looking at a comprehensive traffic study where we provide data to the consultants on our existing system, roadway volumes, turning movement counts, and they provide us a report on the existing conditions and a single signal timing for proper coordination for these systems. This is a study that should be conducted every 3 to 5 years because we have new businesses that come in, businesses that move out, new traffic generators, so that we can better coordinate our signals. The other portion of this, as I mentioned, is communications, and so we're looking at setting up communications using fiber to our signals. We had tried various systems in the past that just weren't as effective as the fiber communication is. This is a map of what we're looking at overall comprehensively for our signals, and we'll basically be able to pick up the controllers at each of the major intersections that I discussed in the corridors so that we can get communications back to City Hall. What it'll allow us to do is it'll allow us to remotely be able to see what our signals are doing. So we'll be able to get this communication to our existing traffic management center. We get this communication using the new software. It's able to red flag any areas or any issues that we're seeing with our signals. Our staff would be able to, at that point, troubleshoot and see what's going on with the signals. We're working with our PD to also use cameras from these intersections, again, getting that same communication through the fiber lines for those cameras. So we'd be able to visually see what's going on at the intersections, and then also be able to see what the actual signal is doing, and be able to be more effective with the use of our staff when we send them out to correct signal issues. For a lot of the signals where we don't have communication to them, the staff will go out, we'll get a call in for there's something wrong with the signal, it's not turning, it's taking too long to get through the signal. The staff goes out to the field and they're troubleshooting those controllers out in the field. They're making adjustments as they think that need to be done. They'll watch to see if the adjustment's done. Sometimes that they get it fixed, sometimes they think they get it fixed, go back to the office, we get another call that it's still not functioning. So with this type of system, we'll be able to remotely see what's happening with the signals. We'll get better information back with the software that we recently purchased to be able to more efficiently time our signals. And so those components, as I mentioned, include hardware, communication, and engineering for a total of $3 million. The bond election, just in summary, is two propositions, A and B, 22 for drainage and $3 million for traffic. The effect on the average homeowner, should both propositions pass, is approximately $2 each month or $24 a year based on a home value of $128,133. That's the average home value. The election, early voting, April 23rd to May 1st, excluding Sunday the 29th, and election day is May 5th. If you'd like more information, you can contact my department, 681-1151, or the city manager's office. You can also visit our website. There's still not information on the website. We are in the early process of putting this together, so you'll be seeing information roll out onto our website. Again, we are not promoting the bond. I'd just like to end this. We're providing you information so that you can make whatever decisions you deem necessary. Yes, sir.
Okay, before we ask any questions, if you don't mind, Mr. Rodriguez, do you have any comments? Do you have anything to add here before we start the question and answer?
I didn't plan to, but I would urge you to advise your friends and colleagues around the city of McAllen that we are more than pleased to go and see anyone that would like to see this presentation or a variety of others that we have. What we like is questions, okay? I mean, that's what I personally prefer. There's a lot of information out there that usually doesn't come from City Hall, like we paid for the ditch at DHR. And it's very important that you have facts from us. So we thank you. I'm very lucky to have these folks working here with me, and they're the best of the best. And so any question that you may have, we don't have an answer today, we'll go find it. So thank you for having us here.
I have a question. In the time frame that you, in your presentation, how much total money have we spent, whether it's city money, county money, state money, or federal money, how much money have we spent in this time frame for drainage? And how much money have we spent in this time frame for traffic?
In what time frame, sir?
The
Time
06.
frame that you're suggesting, 2000, is it 2006 to now?
I have that for you. That's
I'm
all.
just curious.
I believe it's approximately 15 million from 06 to 2018. I don't have the 15.56 million. I don't have the breakdown as far as all the different categories. On the city's portion for CIP, if you give me 1 second, I might be able to have that for you. we've spent approximately $4.1 million out of CIP alone. Out of those more or less $15 million that I mentioned, $4 million has come from CIP. And so the remaining would be from various categories. It'd be CDBG, hazard mitigation grants. We also received a grant during Dolly, which doesn't necessarily fall under the hazard mitigation grant or CDBG, but it's a grant as well. Yes, sir.
I have another question. Sometimes in the communication area around the city, it seems like we're piecemealing it part by part. Have you ever looked at doing a complete a robust wireless network that covers the entire city?
You know, interestingly, in that conversation, our IT department has been evaluating that type of a system. What we're actually looking at is we don't do this communication in a silo. Our IT department will look at how we can run this fiber communication system so that we're able to impact our other facilities. Right now, there is some fiber installed throughout the city. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily run down the corridors, the roadway corridors that we need to, because we're trying to get to certain facilities. However, part of this initiative that we're doing with fiber is taking advantage of some FTA funds. Federal Transit Administration funds. So we're working with our transit department so that they can take advantage and actually run this along routes that the buses use, so we can get federal transit money and only pay for 20% of the improvements, and federal transit will pay for 80% of the improvements. So because they're looking at communications to their bus stops to give you advance warning, bus will arrive in X minutes, or bus is coming at this time. That we're working with our police department, because we are installing cameras through PD, which will use this fiber system as well, and traffic will take advantage of that fiber system as well. So we're not doing it in silos, although the presentation might seem it's focused on traffic. We do work with the various departments with the city to be able to take advantage of this infrastructure and fully utilize it. As far as wireless technology, like I said, our IT department is evaluating that and has been evaluating that. I think they're working with some schools as well to see how we can service that. We have some facilities that actually do have that capability. Our central fire station, we have a lot of students who are around our central fire station taking advantage of that Wi-Fi system that the city has. So there are efforts to be able to take a look at that and see where else it could be expanded.
We just gave a proposal. I mean, we talked about it years and years ago, and unfortunately, the IT department at the time, quite frankly, didn't understand. But it could have been done a lot cheaper, and we would have had a robust system that's higher back down the cover.
If I can speak with you afterwards, maybe we can set up a meeting with the IT director, and he can better explain what processes he's using now and how we're implementing some of those systems.
In your longer-term plans on transportation, do you have any plans to go to the loop concept to use, so well in Houston, San Antonio, Dallas?
The loop systems, right?
They got a free stoplight every 50 yards.
Yes, sir.
He works on the line.
Yes, sir. Our city is a very linear city. The maps that you saw, I mean, it's a linear city. I think we could take better advantage of loops if we had something that was more squared off. And so in order to improve our transportation system, we need to work with our adjacent municipalities to create those loops and be able to go around the city to be effective loops. We work closely with the Hidalgo County MPO when we're looking at roadway projects. And so those discussions as far as providing corridors and loops around the city have to be taken with other municipalities as well. So we are actively involved with the MPO and looking at those corridors that could benefit the city as well as other cities.
How much of the drainage design that I saw when I looked at y'all's map up there, none of it touches anything with Tracy Largo's or anything in between here and there? Not just their property, but the property between here and there that you use to get to annex out there. So what are your plans for drainage in that area out there getting to that property?
So the county, ours doesn't show a significant amount of drainage improvements in that area because a lot of that area was in our ETJ. However, the county had previously passed a bond for drainage improvements as well. And those drainage improvements include a canal system and a ditch system that runs just south of Tres Lagos that they're widening and making improvements to be able to provide drainage in that area. So that should provide the capabilities that are needed to drain that area. However, if you have a subdivision, you still have to get to that drainage.
And Tres Lagos is entirely responsible for taking care of
Their property, but their water's gonna drain off into
the county's.
the new county, future drain in the future.
And they are required to meet the detention requirements that we have in the city. So they detain the water before they release it.
One of the things you're going to notice about the presentation and the maps is the majority, if not all of the projects that we're doing is in existing areas of the city of McAllen. Okay? Old parts of town that have had drainage structures there for 20, 30, 50 years, and we've got to upgrade it. It's funny that somebody brought up Nolana. Nolana, 30 years ago, was way out there. It was called Nolana Loop. Well, it's just right there now. And so, you know, we're 17 miles long, our city is, and only 4 miles wide. And so it makes it very difficult for us to be able to do utilities in a city that looks like that. But what you will notice is that we are upgrading existing infrastructure that's just too old.
I have a question. So it was mentioned that we're 17 miles long and 4 miles wide. Are there maybe other cities, and obviously that you've spoken with, that are in a similar position that you work with, maybe not in the valley?
There are some. I mean, you know, you're going to have the same thing. It doesn't matter what utility you're talking about. It's going to be difficult to be able to have an efficient system. For example, for sewer, you know, if you had the same amount of square miles that we do in a, as they said, in a square, then the longest distance to get that sewer to your plant would be much, much shorter. And so for us to travel 17 miles with wastewater is almost impossible. So you've got to have lift stations, you've got to have more than one wastewater plant, and in fact, the PUB is already looking at siting a third wastewater treatment plant because the distances are so long.
My second question is, do you know how many registered voters can vote?
There are 63,000 registered voters in the city of McAllen right now. 63, just over 63,000 at the last count.
Okay, and do you know what was like the last amount that they came out to vote?
Well, not in the general election. In the district election that was just held, it was approximately a 15% registered voter turnout, which was actually, the runoff had 15%, the original one was 10%, so it got a little better.
Get out and vote.
Yes, yes, please tell everyone to get out and vote. That's a good message.
One last question for me. 4 miles wide, 17 miles long. And I could get this wrong, but y'all bought a lot of land out of Moore Air Base, right?
Bought land.
Moorfield?
Yeah, we don't own that anymore.
No.
Oh, you already put it?
Yeah, we actually shouldn't have, but we actually donated it to the federal government. I'm trying to get it back.
Donated to the federal government?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What did you get in return?
I don't know. I wasn't here.
You donated, you know, we got. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So basically, you know, the traffic study is just traffic control. You're not going to think about widening the highway.
No. Correct.
Excellent question. You know, we're trying to finish the last bond issue. We've got a couple of roadways to finish. We're going to do this traffic mobility improvement bond, and then we're going to evaluate where our need is moving forward is on our east-west corridors. Once you get past mile 3, we have them. They're all 2 mile lanes, 2 mile roads. 2 lane roads. 4 mile, 5 mile, 6 mile, 7 mile, and then you get to 107 and the same thing. So our east-west is a problem.
Trenton is 5 lanes.
Trenton
is.
That's why they didn't name it.
Boy, didn't we in 2013 have a bond issue where we gave the city of McAllen $45 million?
Yes, 15 million for roadways, 15 million for parks, and 15 million for the Performing Arts Center.
Well, what happened to Bicentennial?
That's,
Bicentennial is one of the bond projects, and as a bond project, it was a 2-lane roadway. And when this new administration came in, we recommended that we not move forward with that project. We didn't think it was cost effective. And so we went to the city commission, we recommended that we approach the Texas Department of Transportation and the federal government for funds to increase the capacity of Bicentennial, much like you see from Nolana to Trenton. They agreed. Now the caveat to that was, if we do this, it's going to cause us to lose a lot of time, because we're going to have to go secure funding and so on. We have secured that funding. You will get a 4-lane facility all the way to 107 for less city taxes than the bond issue contemplated. And that is due to go to construction this year.
That's from Trenton on.
From Trenton to 107.
to 107.
Good.
Highway 2 that we finished.
It's scheduled to be finished in December of 2019.
Then they start what addition?
Yeah, then they break it all up and put another lane on. So we're thinking that they're going to be a little ahead of schedule, maybe by September of 19, but their deadline is December. Believe me, it's painful.
Question about, what about going to Second Street from Princeton all the way up to Red Gate or whatever the name, Problems or whatever it is? You know, it seems to me that you already have the right of way, you donated or dedicated.
We have the majority of the right-of-way. We don't have all of the right-of-way at this time. There's a few parcels that still have not been dedicated through the subdivision process. So we're still a few years out before we start looking at that extension of Second.
So we're going to bid Bicentennial this year. Yvette just received bids for 29th Street, which will be extended to 107. Taylor Road will be bid probably in 2019, 2020. But that's only from the Expressway to Mile 2, and then we'll move forward with Mile 2. So we're trying to do the north-south corridors, which are very important to come in and out of town, and then look at east-west.
Thank you.
The Second Street and I-2 bridge is going to be changed, as they say, in the future.
So there is a project identified on the MPO for that, but if it comes to fruition, it's several years,
Right.
20 years.
What do you think about that project?
Get rid of the bridge, go over like a bicycle.
Say that again?
Get rid of that bridge and change it, make it a straight shot.
Yeah, it is programmed to be constructed, but it is very, very costly. I'm a proponent of that project. We're both engineers. I'm a proponent, she's not. So I'm gonna side with her. She's a city engineer. And we're gonna wait. It's very, very costly, and we could use that money elsewhere.
It did change, the thing about it did change a lot of traffic with the HEB.
It sure did.
It changed the traffic.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an emergency type of corridor with the hospitals and so on, so she's looking at it real hard.
Thank you.